Hello, my name is Shalimar Woods and I am a master's student. My area of research is Black women during trauma and anti-Black racism, and I study alternative modes of therapy for the Black community, particularly Black women. I am a proud Afro-Caribbean woman. Both of my parents actually were born in the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago. I am born here in this country that many would call Canada. My relationship to the word Canadian, or that identity, is very complicated, I would say. So growing up, I didn't see a lot of representation to what I perceived to be a Canadian citizen. So from language, art, music, food, culture, those things never really resonated with me. I grew up in a really small town, very, very west of here. And during that time in the 90s and the early 2000s, the demographic there was predominantly white. My parents did keep a lot of Caribbean cultural, not so much traditions, but practices more so. But I didn't grow up traditionally in a Caribbean or even African per se diasporic household. They very much prioritized assimilation inside my family. So I grew up in a weird space where I didn't really identify with the true Canadian identity, but I didn't really know what I was. So I would do things like try to change my hair, to straighten it, make it look like the other girls from school. I do things to my skin to make me try to look a little bit lighter, listen to music that I felt other people in my class was listening to. But those things never really fit me, never suited who I was. And so later on in life, I did a little bit more research and digging into not just who I am as a Caribbean woman, but lineagely and ancestrally, my African ties as well. And so being an individual that has Arawak and or Carib indigenous roots, and somebody that also has African indigenous roots, and also a whole bunch of other multicultural things in there as well, I was more gravitated towards identifying as Afro-Caribbean, predominantly because I wasn't happy with, the other definitions of what Canadian meant. For me, having those roots and having those ties meant that I can associate and familiarize with those other identifiers, the Caribbean and African ancestry that was inside of me. And those things were more familiar. And so now I just identify as Afro-Caribbean who is Canadian citizen. So Black History Month for me signifies two things. One is a reflection of the past, celebrating that reflection into the present. It also is something that I'm able to look and see patterns of anti-Black racism, patterns of history that is reproduced in our current time, as well as can be projected into our future. So multiple things have been discussed in this series. Another thing that I'd actually like to add is the over-surveillance of Black individuals within our communities. An example that I could provide is in the city of Toronto, there was a practice, and still possibly can be practice, that is called carding. Basically what happens is that police officers will stop at random vehicles and do a on-the-spot security check within the vehicles. The problem with this was that there was a lot of people of color being stopped in comparison to other ethnicities, particularly being white and Asian or lighter skin complexities, which is another form of just anti-Black discrimination and had only really been addressed about 2 or 3 years ago by the Black Lives Matter initiative. Through systematic racism, anti-Black policies, high levels of violence and trauma within the Black community, Black individuals are actually susceptible to a lot of different mental and respiratory and physical ailments that are down to a genetic level through the study of epigenetics. Some examples. When a mother is stressed and exposed to a high level of anxiety-inducing situations, and she's carrying a child, these mental health or even physical ailments can be passed down biologically in the womb to the child. In addition to that, micro and macro aggression, anti-Black violence is also found a lot and predominantly in the Black community. And so Black individuals are actually extremely susceptible to PTSD, being post-traumatic stress disorder. And if left unattended, it could lead to a whole bunch of mental health disorders, being bipolar disorder, anxiety, and severe depression. Resiliency can be used as a tool to build strong coping mechanisms. And although it doesn't cure mental health diseases or erase the history of the past or cure the world of racism, which I'm sure we would all love, it still helps to improve and sustain psychological and physical health for Black community and Black individuals as a whole. And so certain practices can be put into place to ensure that resiliency is practiced mindfully. Things like building a strong, healthy community, things like spiritual practices, family, and friends all contribute to resilient practices within the Black community. And mindfulness is also something that is of fundamental importance, being accountable for our own actions, but also gentle and kind to our own selves as we dismantle colonial practices on ourselves and within the Black community as a whole. So as a final thought, I think there's a lot to learn from our Black history, our pride, our resiliency, but also something that we can celebrate as we move forward into the future, ensuring our mental livelihood, our physical livelihood, and growth within the Black community. So for more information, click the link below.